everybody. Welcome to joining us for another conscious conversation here at Consciousness Rising. This is a place where we try and bring you people that are enlightened or like to bring enlightenment and upliftment and knowledge to their communities, and obviously in turn contributing to the planet. So if you're interested in any of those topics along the lines of esoteric topics, alternative lifestyles, consciousness, or energy, then please check out all of our videos below so that I'm sure you'll find something that can help you along your journey. Today, I'm joined with my co-host, who is Antonella Bargione. Hi, Antonella.
Hello, everyone, and welcome.
My name is Tanya Norris, and our incredible guest today is somebody from Cape Town. She is a navigational life coach and an astrologer. Her name is Michelle Mcclunan. Is that correct, Michelle? Hi.
Hi there. Hi, Tanya. It's Michelle Mcclunan. It's quite
Mcclunan. Okay. Mcclunan. Well, welcome, Michelle, and thank you so much for agreeing to join us today. Because astrology is it's a huge topic. I just want to read out here a bit of your bio. So Michelle is a qualified counseling astrologer, life coach, and process art facilitator who has counseled internationally for 18 years. Her comprehensive navigational coaching sessions provide clients with deep understanding and insights into themselves and help to illuminate the meaning and purpose of their lives. And Michelle, you offer several things here: personal astrology readings, one-on-one navigational life coaching, a fortnightly video on current alignments, that's obviously the astrology, transformational workshops and retreats, incorporating process art, the Journey to Freedom, which is an online 13-week transformational course, Inner Space, which is a monthly online support and guidance platform. So, I mean, those are wonderful topics for us all to delve into. But now, for the purpose of this, let us talk some astrology. Let us talk about what is astrology, why is it useful to know about it, what are alignments, some of the alignments from that 2020, we're not going to talk too much about that, but coming now into 2021 and how those impact us. So, give us the lowdown.
Well, thanks for inviting me. It's lovely to be here. It's lovely to be with both of you and all of you out there, whoever's going to be watching. So astrology really is something I've always been kind of interested in. And 22 odd years ago, I started studying it professionally, so properly, because it's a very big subject, as you said, and it's got many different streams to it. So most of us know our sun sign, and they think many of us think that that's astrology isn't. It's really the study of the planets and the planetary movements from our perspective on Earth. And what happens when you draw up an astrology chart, which you can do for a human being, you can do it for a country, you can do it for a business. You draw up a chart for a moment in time, specific moment in time. And that chart's going to be different depending on where you live and the time that you were born. So, you know, you can have somebody born on the same day, different time, they will have a different chart. So it's much like a kind of a blueprint. I sort of see it as the way I've learned to actually work with astrology. I don't use it as a predictive art per se, but I use it as a navigational tool, which is why I can call myself a navigational coach, because it's a little bit like a map, like a bit of a compass to keep us sort of directed in terms of our soul's evolution. So I see it as a soul blueprint, or you could see it as an energetic blueprint based on the principle that we are connected to everything. So as is the macrocosm, as is the microcosm. What happens outside happens inside. What happens inside happens outside. And that's really the way I can explain it. Nobody can really tell you why astrology works, but it absolutely does. I mean, it's kind of still amazes me on a daily basis, because it's not something that you can understand with the literal mind. You have to kind of drop into or sort of look at it from a higher perspective. You can't look at it rationally, because then it doesn't really make any sense. But it's like a language.
Yeah, it's a language, but I think anything that involves consciousness isn't going to make sense, is it? We don't. I mean,
No,
quantum physics is really coming up with some answers to us in how that can work, you know, and I'm pretty sure that quantum physics and all these different types of sciences and physics will explain it one day. We just haven't gotten there yet. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're getting closer to it. It's really, it's kind of a sacred language. Astrology is a language, and it's a very old language, and it's kind of a sacred language of divine intelligence, how we interact with the cosmos, how the cosmos interacts with us in any one moment. So we draw up a chart for a moment in time, and then we look and see what that promises in terms of potentials, in terms of energy, in terms of characteristics of whatever you're looking at, and then what is likely, the themes that are likely to be in place in any one time, depending on the actual movement of the planets. So that's sort of where we can actually see the alignments that are happening in somebody's personal life, but more importantly actually is the big alignments that are happening to in our solar system, which are impacting us each in a different way. It's fascinating.
And the thing is, you can also look at that. It's not just for the person, but it can be for different regions, different countries, different and the planet as a whole.
Absolutely, yeah. So you would there's a branch of astrology called mundane astrology, which sounds like it's boring, but it's not. It just means that it's sort of the earth, and it's the study of countries and of climate changes and all that kind of stuff. So that would be the province of somebody who's actually studied that. But I mean, I dip into it. It's obviously fascinating. But it's really, those are the people that will say, this is likely to happen in this country on that day. So, for example, 9/11 was predicted by numerous astrologers. But obviously nobody listened to them because, you know, but it was predicted, and literally almost to the day. So people could see that something was going to happen in that area at that time. And we've kind of seen that very clearly in terms of what's been going on for the last year, which was foreseen by many astrologers, myself included, even though I'm not a mundane astrologer.
What do you call yourself? What kind of astrologer are you?
I do personal astrology mainly. So I sit with people and I look at their natal chart, and I look at it in terms of their potentials, what they've come in with. So it's a little bit like your thumbprint is your physical blueprint, which is unique to you. Your birth chart is unique to you. So only somebody born sort of 200 k's away from you in the same place would actually have the same birth time at the same minute. So it's a very small window. It's about 2 minutes, and it's got to be within a certain region for you to have the same birth chart as somebody else. And then the astrology chart kind of gives you a lot of the basic, it gives you kind of the archetypal energy. It's almost like a unique sheet of music that's yours, and you can choose how to play it. And that's where the free will comes into a degree. So the chart will tell us a lot about what we've come in karmically, what our soul evolutionary potential is, which is where I really find it very interesting. But it's really kind of how, if we can align to the birth chart, to our birth chart, it helps us to align, for me, to our soul purpose of being here. So we're not fighting the river, we're kind of flowing with the river. We're in the river of life. We're not trying to fight something which isn't us. So that's the way I structure a reading, which they're not structured really, but they're quite intuitive. But it's about working with the person to actually find out, what is my potential? How can I best completely accept what I've come in with and align with that, rather than try to be somebody else, try to fit into somebody else's box. And so even though we're made up of all these different archetypes within each of our unique blueprints, for me, and as I get older and as I do more conscious work myself, I realize that yes, those are archetypes that are within us, and their potentials and their characteristics and their personality traits and emotional reactivity patterns and all that. Wounding, pain bodies, you can see that in a chart. You can often see, you know, what was happening with somebody very young in their childhood. And so it cuts through a lot of the very lengthy processes that are sometimes associated with ongoing therapy, which is why Carl Jung used it so much, because he was able to look at and see, cut right to the, you know, the main features in that chart and kind of work from that basis, which cuts through a lot of the dross. So yeah, so it gives you that blueprint. But what I realize is that we're none of that really, because who we are is all of it. So if you look at a birth chart is in the round. It's always in a wheel in Western astrology. And if you look at it, sort of, I almost like to see it as it's a diamond. And if you're looking at a diamond from above, the diamond's got a whole lot of different facets in it. But the diamond is the diamond in its fullness. And so it's made up of different facets, and it's got a few little flaws and a few little chips, but actually the brilliance of the diamond is there. So it's actually getting sort of taking away any of the preconditioned beliefs that we have, that we aren't the diamond. So it's kind of cutting away and polishing it and taking it away so that the diamond can shine more brilliantly. That's it's an analogy, but I think it's a helpful one.
Antonella?
Yes, I would like to bring you back a moment to the archetypes. So,
Yes.
Because in the end, I mean, each planet represents an archetype. Represents an archetype. And I find that absolutely beautiful, because it's like you're having all these dynamics just above you, which influence, have got the potential to influence you so dramatically. And of course, yes, it can happen, and it can't, and it doesn't have to happen at the same time. But at the same time, it feels like almost like a theater. And so the language becomes a poetic language.
Yes.
For me, it's like it just bypassed the mind. And so, yeah, it's poetic language to know that Mars is the god of war, but it's also the god that moves things, and Aphrodite and Venus is the goddess of love, and many other things. It's just working with archetypes, and it's so beautiful that. So do you have anything to add on that?
Absolutely, yeah. So when we look at any chart, that's what we look at. So I look at the archetypes to start with. So we would usually start with the sun, because everybody knows their sun sign. And the sun, really very briefly, because the archetypes are quite deep, as you obviously are aware of. You know, you can go on forever about the archetypes, but very briefly, if you've got the 5 personal planets, which are quite quick moving, which is the sun, moon, Mars, Venus, Mercury. The sun would be the masculine, the way I read a chart. The sun would be the masculine, how you take your energy out into the world, how you express your light, very much like the sun. Shines in the sky 24/7 without us, whether there's clouds or not, it's still shining. So the sun in the chart is that part of you that wants to shine out. It's an outward energy. And so that's what you're learning how to do, is to actually get rid of anything, well, not get rid of it, but clear anything that's blocking your light, so that you can actually step into that full light of what your sun actually represents in your birth chart. So you would look at where the sun is, so the sign that it's in. And so the signs always tell you how that planetary energy or archetype expresses itself. So obviously, if you take the sun in Aries, which is a bold, kind of very powerful fire sign, the sun is going to express itself very differently than if you had your sun in Pisces, which is the last sign of the zodiac. It's very gentle. It's water. So this is where you kind of learn the language of astrology. So that would be the sun would be the one archetype. Then the moon would be kind of the opposite of that. It's the feminine. So most of us know our sun sign, but we don't know our moon sign, which is, I find quite interesting. You know, so if people meet you for the first time, most of the time they'll say, what do you do? They'll ask about your sun without knowing it. What do you do? What's your next plan? What's the next thing that you're going to achieve? How are you going to shine your light? Very few people, unless you're on the journey that we're on, would say, you know, how are you feeling today, Antonella? So that moon is more the feeling realm, the instincts, the inner world. It's the, if you look at the sun shines its rays out and the moon reflects them. She just hangs there and reflects them. So she's mysterious. She's changeable. She's moody. You know, she changes. She moves much faster than anything else. So the moon is that archetype. So you have to look at those two to start. And then we can go on. So we've got the other archetypes. You've got Mercury, which is the planet of the mind and communication, how we think, how we speak, how we listen, how we communicate, how we learn. So somebody with Mercury, say in Cancer, might learn in a kind of absorbing kind of way. When they get it, but it might sort of absorb into them. There's somebody with a very quick Mercury, like an air Mercury, which is an elemental, it's the element of air, would be much quicker, which would be much wittier, and they'd get the concept quicker. So that's Mercury. I don't know if you want me to do the others as well, Antonella, or if you want questions.
It's just for our listeners who don't know anything about astrology, just to get less scared, because sometimes they think that it's so difficult. So, I mean, it's just like, really just to say it again, is how all your planets are positioned at the exact time you're born, and so you can see all this show or theater show that is happening in your life, and you kind of, oh, that's why. Yeah, absolutely.
And for me, you know, it's not about predicting specific events. It's not about somebody saying to somebody, you know, you're going to move to another country in May. It's not specifics. It tells you, it gives you themes. So if somebody's giving you specifics, they're probably using some other method. So they're probably pulling in some psychic ability. And, you know, you can predict with astrology. Medieval astrologers did a lot of prediction. I personally don't find it useful. I prefer to help somebody navigate the themes that they're actually experiencing in their chart so that they can understand them and work with them, and not think in some cases that they're going crazy or that you know, this is never going to end, because it always will, because it's cyclical. So that's the other beauty about astrology, is everything is going to change. Even this, it will change. It has to, because it's cyclical and we are cyclical. So it's really about, it's sort of the underpinning. It's not the actual event. Even in a birth chart, you can give them the potentials. You can give somebody the potentials, but you can't tell what frequency that person is going to, or what level of consciousness that person is going to use to play out that stage show that Antonella is speaking about. So, you know, they might have a similar chart, but the one might decide to be, you know, play a little guitar, you know, once in a while because they've got a musical ability, and somebody else might take that musical ability and run with it and, you know, become very world famous as a musician. It's the frequency through which we choose to actually use what we've been given. That's our personal free will. That's the way I see it. So what's going to happen sometimes we don't have control over, because when I look at a chart, you'll often be able to see what happened when you were 5. You can see it. You can see what the main themes, you'd call them kind of turning points, big things. Those things that were going to happen were going to happen. Because in hindsight, you can look back on the chart and see that it was going to happen. Which also is kind of reassuring in a way, because for me, it helps me to see that there is a greater plan. There is a guiding hand in all this, and there is order in the chaos, in what seems to be chaos. There absolutely is order. And that's what every single day I see that in front of me. And just, if there wasn't order, then the art of astrology wouldn't work.
So,
and also, if we believe that we, oops, should I go?
Carry on.
So if we believe that we are here with a purpose that we agreed upon before we came on Earth, the astrology is just helping us on this planet to live it. So you were talking about frequency, and we know that the frequency on our planets at the moment is just working out in a big way and bringing change. And we just got in the famous age of Aquarius that we've been waiting for a while. So what's happening? What's happening?
Okay, well, I am going to backtrack just a little bit, not to spend too much time on it, but just to go back to this time last year, January last year. Two planets came together, which you might be aware of, but your listeners and watchers might not be. Planet Pluto, and the planet Saturn. Now, they came together in January 2020. And the year before, I could kind of see that happening, and I was running around saying, oh, okay, we need to brace ourselves for major change, because that was what was going to happen. And basically, the energies of those two, first of all, they only come together once every 38 years. So it's not something that happens every day. And when they come together historically, there are major global events which really impact on the collective. Okay, so, very briefly, the first time was kind of in our lifetimes, our parents' lifetimes, First World War. Second time, the end of the Second World War in Vietnam. Third one, stock market crash in the 80s, and now 2020. So they come together, and the two planets, the archetypes of those planets, also very multidimensional and very layered, but very sort of briefly, is Saturn rules structure. So Saturn rules things like governments, big corporations, top-down systems where you will do this. It's rules and regulations and structures and those things that have been around forever, tradition. Okay, so that's the planet Saturn if you look at it from this lens, okay, because it's much bigger than that. Pluto, which some people say isn't a planet, but let me tell you, it's very, very much part of our archetypal patterning. Pluto rules the breakdown of those structures. So Pluto comes along, and I kind of like to see him as the plumber of the zodiac. And so Pluto comes along and he goes underneath the surface and he creates havoc and he rips everything up and he pulls up whatever has been hidden underneath the surface, and it sucks it up to the surface so that it can be seen. And so if you look at the two of them together in the chart, in energetically, archetypally, it's the dismantling of structures that don't work. So structures that have got, it's like a house. If the foundations have got cracks in them, the house is not going to stand up for very long. And this, I believe, is what's happening on our planet. So the structures don't work. The old way of doing things doesn't work. The top-down way of doing things doesn't work. And so Pluto is also known as the planet of death. So it's the destruction of what doesn't work, so that something else can be reborn out of the ashes. Pluto is also the phoenix, what needs to burn so that phoenix can fly. So what we've been experiencing over the last year from an astrological perspective, the way I interpret it, is that. It's the collapse of what doesn't work, and the clearing, the exposing, the bringing to light of that which is underneath the surface and has not been looked at. So there's been a lot of exposures, obviously, a lot of stuff's come to the surface that was never there before. It was there, but it was never spoken about. So that's kind of led us to this. And so that was last year's process. And now this year, it's slightly different. Obviously, we're still in that state of transformation. And I think that we're still, I always like to see Pluto as the chrysalis, the transformation process, which is, you know, that caterpillar that goes into the cocoon and then dissolves and later comes out as a butterfly. We're kind of still dissolving. So the way is not shown yet. The way is not clear yet, because still stuff is still coming to light. And then we go into this year, and obviously there's always lots and lots of alignments, but the main one this year is between the planets Uranus, or you can call it Uranus, and Saturn again. Okay, now in between this, Saturn has moved out of Capricorn, which is where it was last year, which rules structures and old and traditions. So it's been going through Capricorn for about 2.5 years. Jupiter, another very big planet, was moving through Capricorn as well. And the great conjunction earlier on in this year was where Saturn and Jupiter entered into Aquarius at the same degree, at 0 degrees, which is called the Great Conjunction. And that's what a lot of astrologers are seeing as the real age of Aquarius, the real dawning of the age of Aquarius, which had its roots back in the 50s and 60s when those two planets were actually interacting then. So the seeds that were planted then, you know, love, peace, revolution, this doesn't work, we need to be one, we need to be unified, that theme, those themes are now, it's 50, 60 years later, those themes are now coming to be again. So this year, so that was the great conjunction earlier on between Saturn and Jupiter, and now Pluto is only going to be leaving, because Pluto's got a very long orbit. He takes 248 years to go around. Pluto will only leave Capricorn in 2024. So it's quite a long process, this entering into this new age. It's not just like that, as much as we'd like it to be. So one of the main focuses this year is we have the planet Saturn, which is, again, you know, I've represented what it is, but it's now moved into Aquarius, which is much more about the people, much more about the collective, much more about finding different ways of actually running things, okay? Different ways of actually making things work, which is really a Saturn thing. And that Saturn is actually in a square aspect, which basically just means that it's in a difficult connection with the planet Uranus. Now, Uranus is about freedom, liberation, the people, people's voice, consciousness, where Saturn is the old, stay, control. So what a lot of us are feeling right now is, oh, we want to move forward here. We want to get going into this new consciousness, but there's still this the old order, if you like, the kind of 5 establishments kind of pulling at it. So we're seeing a lot of revolution, seeing a lot of marches, we're seeing a lot of protests, and we're also seeing a lot of censorship. So you can kind of take Uranus as the planet of revolution, rebellion, people taking to the streets, protesting, saying, no, this isn't okay, and Saturn as the control. So this is what we're actually feeling this year, and it's quite a harsh kind of energy, but it's part of the process, is the way I see it. I don't know if that makes sense. It's quite a lot of astrology. But...
Well, if, as you said there, so if 2020 was all about exposure, and it's a long process, would you say that maybe 2021 and maybe 2022 even, we're sitting in that time of processing and integrating before we actually come out as the butterfly? That could take years.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of integrating still, and there's still a lot of exposure because Uranus's energy is also quite exposing. So it's almost, if I had to say, because I treat astrology in quite an intuitive way, Saturn would be structures, it would be these old kind of ways of doing things. Uranus kind of comes in like a bolt out of the blue, almost like a lightning bolt, and just cracks open what's not working as well. So it's also kind of a let's really clear more here. Let's expose more. So it's also an exposure. It's different. A lot of it's already been brought to the surface, but there's still more coming out, you know. So I think, yeah, I'm with you. I don't think that this is going to just pass by right now.
No.
I think there's still going to be a lot of clearing needed, but we are entering into that age of Aquarius, which is really about where we realize just how powerful we are, just how connected we are. And the age of Aquarius is about energy. It's the age of energy. It's stepping into that realization that we are energetic beings. And it's been happening for a long time, but this is kind of the big events that are actually leading to this happening, where people are realizing that, oh, hang on a sec, I'm not actually just the body, you know, I'm not my roles, I'm much more than that. The power of thought, which is Aquarius is the sign of higher thought. So the power of thought is becoming more and more talked about now. That your thoughts do create your reality. And everything you're doing in this moment is actually creating your next moment. And I think that the more we realize that, the more we can actually focus on our frequency, on being frequency holders. And I think any of us that are on this kind of journey, the way I see it is it's a journey back to the heart. It's a journey out of the head into the heart, which is actually what's going to shift everything. It's not going to shift from the mind, from the head. But that's what the problem's been.
So, Michelle, I think that's a very interesting aspect when you say moving from the head to the heart. That's what the age of Aquarius is all about. I always felt like, first of all, that we have been in the age of Aquarius for a while. That's the first thing. Secondly, I always thought or believed it to be about things like alchemy and consciousness and magical things and mystical things, so to speak. But I was always also under the impression that it does go on for a couple of 100 years. So where do you think we're up to? I know you said that it should have started, well, they believed it to start in the 60s, but I kind of felt like it had. What do you think about that?
The ages aren't necessarily astrological per se, because they're thousands of years, the ages. So the age of Aquarius, it takes a long time for an age to actually come into play. And just to clarify, the age of Aquarius is not necessarily specifically from the head to the heart. It's this year, the theme that I see is that it's from the head to the heart. And the way I see, I don't know where we are on the scale of the ages, but what I can say is that with this very large Aquarian energy, with these two major planets moving into Aquarius, followed by, in a couple of years' time, Pluto moving into Aquarius, that sort of seems like it's more of an inflow into Aquarius. So if you look at Aquarius, absolutely, it's alchemy, it's higher consciousness, it's energy, it's everything we're talking about. But when you look at the ruler of Aquarius, which is the planet Uranus, Uranus has actually moved into the sign of Taurus. Taurus is about love. Taurus is ruled by Venus. It's a planet of love. So that gives us the clue because it's the ruler of this energy. And so we are moving into a place where we are going to be getting our structures and our security from another place. And I just believe that there's not necessarily a knight in white armor coming to save us. I believe that it's up to each of us to actually be vibration that we want to put into the world. So what do we want to serve? How do we want to serve? What kind of reality do we want to live? And for us to be living that. So if we want a heart-based, inclusive, equal society, for us to actually be in that vibration, that frequency. And I trust that the more of us that do that, that is enough to shift the trajectory of this planet. If we're able to actually change our focus from the outward and the dualistic, polarized nature of society to one of being more unified. And that for me begins with the heart. And then there's some other clues which kind of bear that out. So that's the way I'm seeing it. Just with the work that I do, it's so telling that that's the place, and also that the point of power does exist in the present moment, right now, right this moment. And in that moment, in this moment, we have the choice of how we want to actually take our energy out, of what we want to think, what we want to focus on, how we want to interact with the world. And that's in a more gentle way. I think that the planet's going to go through a lot more changes. I think our money system is going to change completely. I think our education system is going to change completely. More and more people are going to be living in community. That's very Uranian and very close to the ground. We're going to be more close to the earth. So I just see the heart-centeredness being the way forward. That clarifies.
I think there are a lot of signs of all of those things already happening, like the educational system. People are finding different ways to educate. You know, banking system was always in flux and crisis, and so that's interesting. Antonella, do you have anything to add there? I think what we're going to have to do maybe is just come to our closing points now. So Antonella, is there anything you'd like to add here?
No. I'm very grateful for you coming on board. I really am. And I love the way you made it a layman language, which I really like, so that people who are just starting, there's so many of them who are just like all aerials. I'm searching, I'm seeking. So it's a nice way to reach, especially the youngsters. I really love that. So, I don't know, have you anything else to add, Michelle?
No, I think I'm good. It's been really lovely chatting with you both. And it's beautiful to talk about this stuff in a forum like this. So that's a privilege and a pleasure. So thank you for the work that you guys are doing. You're doing exactly what we're talking about. You're putting your energy out into the field. And we can each do that in our own individual way and shine our own individual light, which for me, that light, it shines from the heart. That's where our light shines. So that's what the focus needs to be going forward.
Well, and the other thing I just wanted to say, that you wrote something here it's in your bio. And so this is to quote you: astrology is a language. If you understand this language, the sky speaks to you. I think that's such a beautiful analogy there. I mean, that's absolutely lovely. Michelle, how can people get hold of you? I'm going to put all of your links in our description box below. But are you open? Are you looking for clients? Do you take clients? People want to join your workshops and retreats? How do we get hold of you?
I do one-on-one coaching and astrology, usually starting with an astrology session, which takes about 90 minutes. And then obviously we can do updates throughout the year, or once or twice a year. And then I do coaching aligned with that, always using the chart as the map. So I'm open for those bookings, and I do them all online these days. So we can do it on Zoom, Skype, WhatsApp, whatever the person would like. And I record them so that you can actually listen back afterwards. So I'm available for that, and they can get hold of me at Michelle at Solar Power, and it's with an SOULAR, solar-power.com. And my website is solarpower.com, so they can have a look and see what I've got there. They can subscribe to my YouTube channel. Every 2 weeks I do an update on the full moon and the new moon and what else, the other alignments that are happening. And then I also run online workshops with my partner John, called Journey to Freedom, which is a 13-week course, as you mentioned. And we also have an inner space community, which is helping people to align to their essence, really. That's what it is. And that they can find out about at journeysofawakening.com.
Terrific.
Wow.
And I really encourage people to look into those things, please, because as Michelle has explained to us, it's useful to have a chart. It's useful to have your chart drawn up as a tool to navigate, to see where you are, navigate your way through life, know what you need to work with, what you're working with, and you can maybe work around. So, Michelle, thank you so much. Very, very grateful that you decided to join us, and we'll do more for sure. I think it's going to still be a lot of turbulence going through the next year, so we'll be speaking to you soon. Thank you, Antonella.
Thank you so much, Tanya and Michelle. It's been a pleasure today to be with both of you, and we see you soon also, because I'm going to catch you on the art side.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing. That's a passion. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tanya.
Thanks so much, guys.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Thank you,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.
Till the next time.
Bye.